I stayed in a relationship I knew was wrong for 3 years because I had let myself become completely financially dependent, and I genuinely believed that without his money, I had nowhere to go. What I found out when I finally left is that the cage I was so afraid of had been unlocked the whole time. The screenshots were of a conversation between Scott and his friend Derek. They were about me. More specifically, they were about my bank balance, which Scott had apparently shown Derek as part of a conversation about, and I am quoting here because I memorized it. Why she can't just leave if she's so miserable, she literally has nothing. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop where my friend Mel had shown me her phone. I sat there, and I read those words on that screen, and I stayed in the car for a long time. Not because of the betrayal of it. I mean, the betrayal was there, layered and total. He had looked at our joint account and taken a screenshot of my balance and sent it to his friend as evidence that I was trapped. But I had already known, in some form, that he thought of my financial situation as a leash. What I hadn't understood until that moment was that he was proud of it, that he had said it out loud to another person without shame. What I was sitting with in the car was simpler than betrayal. I was sitting with, he's right, I can't leave if I have nothing. And then, somewhere in that second half hour of just sitting in the parking lot with the coffee going cold in my hand, a different thought arrived. Says who? Scott and I had been together for 3 years when this happened, and I want to tell you honestly about how I ended up in a position where a man could take a screenshot of my bank account as proof of my captivity. Because I did not fall into that position. I walked into it gradually, with his guidance, and with my own willing cooperation, and understanding my own role in it is part of the story I have to tell. I met him at 29. I had a job I had worked hard to get, an entry-level position at a nonprofit I cared about, and an apartment I shared with a roommate, and a life that was narrow but mine. He was 34 and ran his own consulting business and owned his condo and had, from the outside, the appearance of someone who had gotten his life together in the way that 34-year-old men sometimes have. My friend Mel had introduced us. She and Scott had gone to college with the same people, and she'd said at the time, he's a good guy, smart, a little intense. I should have asked more about the intense part. The beginning was not subtle in its attentiveness. He pursued me specifically and consistently, and there is a particular appeal to that when you are 29 and have mostly dated men who couldn't seem to decide if they were interested. Scott decided immediately. He called when he said he would. He showed up exactly when he said he would show up. He made plans and kept them. He was, as I said at the time to Mel, so reliable it was almost boring. Mel said boring is underrated. She was not wrong about that. But boring and controlling can look almost identical from the outside. The first time I noticed the financial thing, I did not name it as that. About 6 months in, we were talking about my apartment, my lease was coming up, rent had gone up, the roommate situation was changing, and Scott suggested I move in with him. He offered it as generosity. He said, "Why are you paying rent somewhere else when you could be here? I have the space. It makes sense." I said I wanted to keep my independence. I said I liked having my own place. He said, "Carmen, what does independence mean when you're barely covering your rent and commuting 40 minutes and spending half your free time over here anyway?" He was not wrong that I was barely covering my rent. I was not making a lot of money. He was not wrong that I spent a lot of time at his place. He was not wrong that the commute was 40 minutes. What he was doing, without my understanding it yet, was building a case. Identifying the pressure points in my situation and using them as arguments. Not for my benefit, though it was framed as my benefit. For his. I moved in 4 months later. I told myself it was practical. It was. It was also the first step in a financial architecture I would not fully see until I was inside it. Living at his place changed things the way living with someone always changes things. It revealed the person more fully. What it revealed about Scott, slowly, was that his reliability was real, but it was also conditional. He was reliable in the ways that mattered to him. Dinner reservations and arrival times and plans that he had made. He was less reliable about the things that I needed, which I discovered were not things he had ever intended to be reliable about. He ran the household. He paid the mortgage and the utilities because his name was on everything. I contributed what I could, which was a portion that was never quite formalized, sometimes accepted, and sometimes waved off in a way that felt generous but functioned as a reminder of the imbalance. After about a year of living together, he started talking about my job. Not aggressively. In his careful, logical way, he started suggesting that my job wasn't the right use of my potential. The nonprofit paid poorly. The growth trajectory was limited. He had ideas about what I could be doing instead. He thought I should leave and take time to think about what I actually wanted. I said I liked my job. He said, "You like it or it's comfortable." That question planted a seed of doubt that he watered regularly over the following months. He was good at that. Introducing a question and then leaving it there, returning to it at intervals, until the question was living rent-free in my head and I couldn't tell anymore whether the doubt was mine or his. I left the job about 18 months in. I framed it as a decision I had made. It was a decision I had been maneuvered into. Without the job, I had no income. Scott said that was fine. He said we were a team and he would take care of things while I figured out what I wanted to do next. I was 29 and recently unemployed and living in his condo, and starting to feel the specific vertigo of a situation that I had created but could no longer control. I had been so busy managing him that I had forgotten to check in on myself. The cold part is harder to describe than the controlling part. The controlling part has a shape, you can point to it. The cold part is more like weather. On paper, Scott was still a good boyfriend. He remembered our anniversary and he was affectionate in public, and he had opinions about my well-being that he expressed regularly, usually in the form of suggestions. Eat better, sleep earlier. You've been scattered lately, have you thought about seeing someone? But there was a quality to the interior of our relationship that I kept trying to find words for. Something that felt like a pane of glass between us that I could not break no matter how I tried. When I was upset about something, genuinely upset, he engaged with it efficiently. He would identify what he thought the problem was and offer a solution, not warmth, a solution. I said once, in a moment of vulnerability, "I just need you to sit with me in it." He said, "I don't know what that means." I believe him. I think he genuinely didn't know what that meant. And that gap, the gap between what I needed and what he was able or willing to give, I kept trying to close it from my side. I kept thinking, if I explain it better, if I ask for it differently, if I adjust how I'm asking. I kept believing the glass could be broken if I just found the right angle. Looking back, the glass wasn't in the way. The glass was him. My sister Ro is 5 years older than me, and we had not been especially close in the years leading up to Scott, just distance and different life stages. She knew about him mostly from phone calls where I summarized things. She had met him twice and had been polite in a way that I had noticed but not investigated. After the screenshots, after the parking lot, I drove to Ro's house without calling first. She opened the door and looked at my face and said, "Come in." We put on coats and went for a walk because that is what my family does with hard things. We put them in motion. We walked around her neighborhood for over an hour, and I told her everything for the first time. Not a version of it, not the managed, presentable version I had given other people when things had come up. Everything. The job I'd left and how it had happened. The money and the way the contributions had worked and how my name wasn't on anything. The cold efficiency of his engagement with my emotions. The way he had told his friend Derek that my empty bank account was why I couldn't leave. Ro listened to all of it with her hands in her pockets and her face forward. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How long have you known you needed to get out?" I thought about it honestly. I said, "A long time, I didn't think I could." She said, "Because of the money." I said, "Yes." She said, "Okay, that's a solvable problem." She said it